So some of you might have already used AWS, and some of you might have not logged into the AWS console any time at all. So I thought I will start from uh, the basics. I will not spend much time on what is cloud computing, but it is always good to start from what is cloud computing. So any ideas, because everybody will have a different definition for cloud computing. Anyone? So what is cloud computing? If what's the thing which comes to your mind when you think about cloud computing?
Utilizing CPU cycles that are out in the world.
Yeah, that's correct too. So yeah, that's one definition, and we have a lot of similar definitions like that. But in a very simple way, to make everybody understand, you can just call cloud computing and cloud as just somebody else's computer which you are using remotely. So that's the simplest definition which is out there for cloud computing. And we have three popular variants in cloud computing. I will start presenting my screen. Can you see my screen?
It's taking a moment, but there it goes.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
It's still coming up for me.
Okay. So this is the best image I was able to find out, which has differentiated the three different variants of cloud computing with the details. So this is the on-premises. This is not a part of cloud computing. It is there just for comparison. So where we will manage everything like networking, storage, servers, operating system, till the application. But when it is the infrastructure as a service, so we don't manage anything related to hardware. When it is platform as a service, we get the middleware and the runtime libraries or some tools also. So software as a service is something which we offer in SDL, the campaign manager product and email manager product. And even if you look at Tridion, or even though it is a content management system, all these are being offered as software as a service. So now there is a belief that, which is true also, that most of the companies whose core business is not technology or not managing infrastructure or spending too much of time on managing infrastructure. So they are spending 70% of their time on infrastructure management or technology management, and they are getting only 30% of their time and effort and resources to manage their core business. So to avoid this and get 70% of the time for the core business and just spend 30% of the time on technology management, the concept of cloud computing came into picture. And as all of us know, AWS is the market leader. There is something called Gartner's Magic Quadrant, which has listed all the infrastructure as a service providers, and AWS as a market reach and a capacity which is equal to the combined capacity of all the other service providers, infrastructure as a service providers out there. Even though Microsoft is trying to catch up there, even though they have the resources and they have the money also, but Microsoft, as their core focus is on their operating system and server, SQL Server, and other tools. They are not aggressively investing in the field of cloud computing yet. They have started it now. Even a month before, the CEO of Microsoft made a statement that we will increase our revenue and we will surpass Amazon Web Services, as we are offering our Microsoft software bundled with infrastructure at a lower cost than Amazon. Even there is something on the pricing method. If you look at the AWS, they charge on hourly basis. Even if you are using a resource just for 1 minute, you'll be charged for a complete hour. On the other hand, Azure will charge you on per minute basis. So some say that Azure is cheaper, but still, as AWS infrastructure is more robust and they are constantly evolving and updating their services, more people still prefer AWS. So that's the basic idea on cloud computing. I have a PPT which I got from LinkedIn. I didn't have to create a new one as this is very detailed. So to understand the basic architecture and some to get some basic idea about AWS. So yeah, as all of us have some fair idea and maybe the operations team, cloud operations team knows how difficult it is to manage a traditional infrastructure, and we have seen this with our Bristol infrastructure also. When we need a need some memory upgrade, it takes a lot of time. Somebody needs to go there and pull the rack or whatever they call it, and add memory, add a new RAM module, and there will be downtime, and there will be a lot of other things. Power should be constant and continuous. The cooling systems are required, and some people should be in the server room always. So it is very difficult to manage a traditional infrastructure considering the requirements, the computing requirements are so high now. So we have cloud computing to eliminate all this additional overhead. So what are the advantages or characteristics of cloud computing? We don't have to spend anything as capital expense, capex or capital expenditure as it is referred to. We just have to pay for what we consume. It is like a bill, water bill or gas bill. We will just pay for what we consume. And compared to the traditional infrastructure, the cost is very low. And as we have seen this AWS console, so we have a lot of options to manage the infrastructure. So somebody who does not have any idea about the servers in detail, so if he just learns AWS also, he will be able to manage it till a certain point where he does not have to modify a lot of things which is part of the core server. So it has a self-service infrastructure, true elastic capacity. So when we say something is scalable, even if you look at our traditional infrastructure where we have our physical servers, they are scalable. We can upgrade the processor or memory or even add additional storage anytime, but it involves a lot of time and effort. So it is not true elasticity, but if you look at cloud computing, so it is a lot more simpler. So that is why they have mentioned it is truly elastic and improve business agility. As I said, people don't have to spend much time managing technology or infrastructure, and they can focus on the business, which in turn improves the overall business agility. So this is the AWS space of innovation, which is nothing but the introduction of new services over the years. And the count is the total number of services which are introduced year on year. And these are the services which are newly introduced every year. So we'll not look into the details of this. We can get this list anytime. So this is the architecture of AWS. So there is AWS Global Infrastructure, which is the physical data centers present in different availability zones and regions. So on top of this layer, there is the networking layer, which connects everything, which connects the data center to the infrastructure, which connects different availability zones among themselves. And on top of the networking layer, we have compute, storage, and database. Compute is the CPU or memory or and other resources. And we have the storage. We have different types of storage. We will look into the different types of storages. And databases, again, AWS offers relational databases and NoSQL databases. On top of it, we have several different services for application management and monitoring. On top of it, we have the deployment and administration layer where we actually deploy our software. So this is how an availability zone is designed. One availability zone is nothing but one single data center. So there will be a minimum of 2 data centers in all the regions. One region will have multiple availability zones. So to keep it more robust, wherever there are 2 availability zones present, AWS is adding a third availability zone there uh, to keep the structure more robust. And this is the global infrastructure. It is present in all these different regions now. I think Frankfurt is not present here. Yeah. So we have 3 regions in the US and one in Sao Paulo. And in Europe, it is present in Frankfurt also. Maybe this is a old presentation. It is present in Sydney also. And the GovCloud is the region which is exclusively available for government organizations. Maybe for something like FBI or CIA, I don't know who is using it, but it is only for government organizations. So just to keep it more secure and isolate it from the public cloud. So these are all the services. So I will go to the actual console where we will have a brief description also, and I will give more details on each service. So this is my personal account. We can select any region. So just the basic idea is you select a region on the basis of where your users are to keep the latency low and to keep the performance high. So if I have users in India, I will use the Singapore or Sydney region. If the users are in Europe, they can use Ireland or Frankfurt regions. Um, yeah.
Does this mean we have to learn geography to use this?
No, you can just talk to anybody who is located in that
That
city.
was more that was more of a joke. I haven't taken a geography class since I was in high school, which was 30 years ago.
Yeah. Fortunately, we are connected globally now. You can just ask anybody on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. It's easy.
Perfect. Perfect.
So, yeah. So we'll start from the storage and content delivery sections. So S3 is a highly available, durable, limitless storage accessible through Web Services API. It replicates data across all the regions. So S3 is global. So most of the services are available in a particular region. There will be some services which are specific to an availability zone, which it means it is specific to a single data center. It will not be available outside the data center. EBS, which is Elastic Block Storage. I will talk more about EBS. So that is one example for a service which is specific to availability zone. So Identity Access Management or S3 or Route 53, which is the DNS server, domain name server equivalent on AWS. So these are global services. S3 is also a global service. It replicates data across multiple data centers. So S3 offers 99.9999999% of reliability. So it means if we have 10,000 records, so after 10 million years, so there is a chance of only one record getting corrupted. So that is the kind of reliability which S3 offers. So if you upload something to S3, you can delete it, but you will never have to worry about the reliability which S3 offers. It is available always. So we have AWS Storage Gateway. It is a service which helps to sync data between an organization's on-premises storage and AWS storage. So it's a virtual machine that we deploy in our data center that sits between our application and our primary storage system. So this is useful when we have invested a lot in our own infrastructure and we want to make use of that along with what AWS has to offer. In such a case, we can use the storage gateway. So we have Snowball. So we have Snowball, which is also referred to as the AWS import and export service. So our Newsmax server is a good example where we can use the Snowball. Even though the size is not in the order of terabytes, we have millions and millions of files. In such a case, if we try to use the internet to transfer the data from the Newsmax server to AWS, if we plan to put the Newsmax servers on AWS. In such a case, if the copy of data is interrupted by something or if it stops, we have to start from the beginning. So towards something like that happening, we use Snowball, which is nothing but it's something like an external disk, but a highly protected external disk in a very robust case. You can compare it to something like black box in an airplane. So you just plug this into your data centers and copy all the data into the Snowball, which is referred to as AWS import export service also. And this will be physically transported to the availability zone where we need it to be hosted. And again, it will be plugged into the availability zone in the region we are trying it to host it. All the data will be copied and then it can be just switched on. So that's the fastest way to get something on AWS if we are planning a application migration to AWS. But if the data is in the order of just some gigs and the number of files are also less, we don't have to use Snowball. We can just use the S3 or some RDP service to upload all the data into our EC2 instances or the EBS instances. So the next service in storage is Glacier. This can be compared to our magnetic tape backup systems or archival systems where we need some data to be archived, but we want to retrieve it at some later point of time. So it's a long-term backup and data archiving solution. It is highly durable and is extremely low-cost storage service. So it is optimized for infrequently accessed data, and data retrieval will take a few hours. And we have CloudFront. It's a web service that makes it easy to distribute content with low latency via a global network of edge locations. Again, CloudFront is something which can be compared to Akamai CDN. Akamai CDN as something called edge locations, using which they offer this high performance. They have thousands and thousands of edge locations. But in case of AWS, CloudFront is a similar service which can be compared to Akamai CDN, but it does not have so many edge locations. It has a few, maybe it has less than 100 edge locations now. So what is edge location? Edge location is nothing but a place where a service provider like AT&T, Vodafone, Airtel, or Reliance have their own data center and infrastructure. They will be connected to this internet line. I think it is in Atlantic Ocean. So they are connected to that line from which they interact among different countries and continents. So if we use the CloudFront service, we will be using one of the internet service providers, so which is nearest to our locations. So by using the internet service provider, we can deliver content, some high definition content with high performance. So we will move on to the compute section. So EC2 is nothing but our server. It is just a server. So instead of going into complex definitions, we will just understand it as a server which has CPU, RAM, and storage. So it is present in AWS in a huge server form. When we request for an instance, for an EC2 instance, it will be provisioned from this server form. So in EC2, so there are a lot of different configurations available, and AWS calls it nano, micro, medium, large, extra large, and there are also some EC2 versions which have iMemory, and there are some EC2 instances with a lot of GPUs available. So for something like our media manager or SDL web applications, we can use the EC2 instances with a lot of GPUs. And for something like big data analytics or Hadoop or data science, I think in SDL it is the machine learning division. For machine learning division, we can use some EC2 instance which has a lot of memory. And in all these EC2 instances, all of them come with some standard storage. The performance of the storage will be equivalent to SSD. So as all of you know, SSD is relatively very fast compared to our traditional hard disk. So the performance of the EC2 instance storage can be compared to SSD. And the micro instance, which is available as part of the free tier, so which we will try to create in our tomorrow session. So it will not have any storage. We have to use elastic block storage as storage in micro instance. So again, the elastic block storage is something which can be compared to a pen drive or external hard disk, where the content will remain even if you switch off the machine or reboot the machine. You can just detach the EBS volume and attach it to some other machine also. So some points about EBS. It is a storage specifically designed to work with EC2. It can only be accessed from an EC2 instance. EBS provides persistent storage that exists independent of instance lifecycle. Again, as I said, even if you are rebooting the machine or if you're terminating the machine also, the EBS data will remain. You can attach it to a different machine. Then if I go to EC2, so these are the features or functionalities available if you go to the EC2 dashboard. So there are three kinds of instances available in EC2. They are reserved instances, on-demand instances, and spot instances. So reserved instances are something which you reserve on the basis of certain forecasting done by some architect, saying that you will be needing these many servers with this configuration. So if you reserve some instances, the per hour cost will be less. So most of the companies which are moving to cloud or migrating their applications to cloud go to the reserved instance model because they will anyways use all the instances for a very long period of time, and they have to ensure the availability and reliability of the application. So they use the reserved instances. On-demand instances is something where you suddenly come up with an idea and you want to do something, and you need servers for it. Maybe it might be some client who is requesting for a new data center or a separate data center or a separate server setup. So in such a case, you can take an on-demand instance which will be charged on per hourly basis. So there is something called spot instance also. So these are not reliable. So this is more suitable for development or only for something where you are doing some calculations only during the night time or non-business hours. So these spot instances are basically something which is available in the unutilized pool of AWS data centers, and a lot of people will be bidding for it. It will be available through an auction. So something like weather forecasting teams or the biotechnology organizations use this spot instances to make a lot of calculations, like thousands or millions of reiterations just to arrive at some result. So they can use spot instances. So if somebody is bidding a higher price, so you will lose the spot instance immediately. So you cannot save any data or you cannot do anything. So you can set up some threshold or time frequency where you want the data to be periodically saved. But at any point of time, if someone bids a higher price, we will lose these spot instances. So for a company which provides software as a service, they should use reserved instances. I think we are also using reserved instances. A good feature of EC2 is the AMIs. So AMI is Amazon Machine Image. Maybe it will take some time to load. Okay, yeah. So Amazon Machine Image is a combination of a certain configuration, certain amount of memory, certain amount of storage, and a certain set of processors, along with some software installed or middleware installed. So these Amazon Machine Images or AMIs can be stored on the public cloud, and it can be made available to everybody. If you come up with some idea, if you this is more with the Linux operating system, where you can do a lot of customizations, or you can modify the kernel also if you have that knowledge, and improve it, make it available to the public. And if it is very good, and if a lot of people are downloading it, you can also make money. So that's how the AMI concept works. So, but in case of an organization where there is a software which is being provided on the SaaS model, for in our case, so we had a lot of issues with the Bristol EM server, so we had to rebuild some server. I think it was Web2. We had similar issue with US UAT environment also. So in such a case, we didn't have any option other than build it from scratch. But if we had an AMI, which had the operating system, which had all the basic software required, like IIS or some even Notepad or anything, and with email manager, we could have just we could just take the AMI and provision it onto a new server. Thereby we can save a lot of time. It will just take 5 to 10 minutes to provision it, instead of spending too much of time on it. Normally we end up spending 5 days, 10 days to set up everything from scratch. So if we had used AWS, we could have done it within few minutes. So that's the advantage of AMI. And so we will look more into elastic block storage. Okay. So if I had an EC2 instance, I could create a new volume here. So we can select which kind of volume we need. So SSD will have very high performance, and there is magnetic storage also. If we are starting with development or pre-production or test environment, we can use the magnetic storage type, where we will be charged less. Once we think that this is good to go to production, we can create a new instance and select the general purpose SSD before going into production. So that's how EBS works. So I will show how to attach an EBS into an existing EC2 instance, or we will create the EC2 instance, create a new EC2 instance and add an elastic block storage tomorrow. So yeah, let's go to other services. So those are the two services which we will use more often in any implementation in terms of the core application. But there are some other services like identity and access management. If any of you have got an AWS account by CloudOps, you might have got some emails asking you to set up an MFA or do something, create MFA, or your account will be deleted within 7 days or 10 days. So identity access management is a service using which you can create different groups and different users. So if you look at a case where there is a developer group, there is a QA group, and there's an application management group, all of these different groups will need different kinds of access. A developer need not have access to something related to infrastructure. He might be just using Lambda. Lambda is a new service again, which just runs the code and gives results instantaneously. So this is part of the EC2 instance. So in such a case, using identity access management, which is referred to as IAM service, we can restrict access. So I will show how to create a group. So, okay, I've already created groups. So this is better actually. Yeah. So there is an administrator group where there might be some team where there will be just 3 people managing the infrastructure for the entire organization. So in such a case, you can create an administrator access role and just give access to these 3 people only. And there will be just developers, and you can restrict their access to EC2 and S3 only. So you don't want them to use anything else. You can just give access to EC2 and S3. If I go to create new group, let's say I will say this is cloud delivery group. So I can select what kind of access cloud delivery group must have. So this is administrator access. If I select this, they will get the complete access. Or if I have to restrict their access to only CloudWatch or Redshift, so I can do that in this screen. Again, there are multiple kinds of accesses here for a particular service. For example, for an EC2 service, it can be full access or just write access or just read access. We can select all those different parameters from the screen. And once I have the group set up, I can create new users. So if I create new users here, so this will generate an access key and secret access key. This is nothing but a public key, private key combination, so which I will have to provide the user. This will be useful only when the user is a developer who is using some APIs to interact with the AWS services and run the application on AWS. Okay. Identity and access. And so we just use EC2, S3 and identity access management a lot. in SDL, so we are not using any other services much. But now we will look at each service, just 2 or 3 lines about each service, just to understand what are the services which AWS is providing, and if we have some requirement in the future, or if you want to do something more with the existing application or existing infrastructure, how we can do it, how we can relate to the existing functionalities which are available as different tools or different hardware or different programming languages. So we will just compare, we will try to compare the AWS services with other things which we are familiar with. So let's start from, we'll start from compute. So container service, EC2 container service is a management service that supports Docker, and it is highly scalable and high performance container service. And again, Docker is a container where you can load your operating system or your, I think it's more of an application which can be ported across multiple platforms or multiple machines. So if you want to know more about Docker, there are a lot of knowledge based articles available on the internet. You can read something about Docker. Elastic Beanstalk is an easier way to quickly deploy and manage applications in the AWS cloud. We just have to upload our application. It automatically handles the deployment details of capacity provisioning, load balancing, auto scaling, and application health monitoring. So Lambda lets us create code. It helps create code and run the code without any provisioning and managing servers. So we just want some simulation. We don't want to create any servers, or we don't want to manage any servers. In such a case, Lambda will create a temporary simulation environment, and it lets us simulate events and get results. So we saw what is S3 and what is CloudFront. And Elastic File System, it is a type of file storage for EC2 instances. It provides a simple interface for creating and configuring file systems easily and quickly. It can be NTFS or FAT or some Linux file system. So this lets us create file systems. So this is a newly available service. So until now, file system was being configured at a later stage in implementation. So this is something new. Instead of using EBS or S3, we can create a file system at the beginning itself, and we can attach it to our EC2 instance. So in the database, we have RDS, which is the relational database service. So it is very easy to set up, and it can be scaled also. So one particular problem which we face with the on-premises environment is the backup. Most of the times, the database will be very huge, and we don't want to save everything. We have run into some issues with our EM alert log sometimes, where it had exceeded the limit and we had to change the integer type or something. So we will not face such issue with RDS, because it is this amount of space which is available is unlimited, and we can go to a particular line of trail, which we refer to as audit trail, for the past 35 days with RDS. So if you want to look at something, if you lose the backup, if you want to look up something which happened 15 or 20 days ago, you can go and check that particular individual transaction among millions or billions of transactions. So DynamoDB is a NoSQL database, so where you are interacting with a lot of images or videos, where you're not particular about the individual transaction line. We can use the NoSQL services. So if you look at some banking system or some billing systems, you cannot use NoSQL database there. It should be relational database, because relational database is more accurate. When you are working with images or videos, we can use NoSQL database. So Elastic Cache, it is a web service which is easy to deploy, operate, and scale an in-memory cache in the cloud. Redshift is the data warehousing solution. So data warehousing is nothing but analytics by using complex queries on relational databases. If you have heard about the tools called Cognos, Informatica, or ClickView, so Redshift is a similar data warehousing tool which is available as part of the AWS. So database migration service is nothing but the service offered by AWS to migrate our on-premise database to AWS. So in networking, we have the virtual private cloud. For an organization, when we get some service by AWS, which is based on a multi-tenant system, we are getting a part of their availability zone, which is a part of their data center. So in case we want to create multiple clouds within the organization, we can use the virtual private cloud service. So thereby creating different clouds by isolating the access completely. This is more useful when we are creating separate clouds for different business units or different organizational units. Something like the business applications team they might want a separate cloud. They don't want anything to be shared with cloud services, or maybe enterprise IT wants something separate. So in such a case, the virtual private cloud service can be used. So the next one is direct connect. So direct connect service can be used when an organization has too much of money. This is nothing but connecting an organization directly to an internet service provider's data center, a nearest internet service provider's data center. So CloudFront is different. In CloudFront, you will be using the nearest internet services provider to deliver content with high performance. But in case of direct connect, you are directly connecting to the internet service provider itself, data center itself. So everything you do, every single transaction, it does not go over the internet. It directly goes to the internet service provider, and it connects to another internet service provider's data center in another continent. So this will be very fast, and it is very expensive also. So Route 53 is the domain name registration and management service available within AWS. So we will the developer tools at this point, even though we don't use it, code commit is a source control service. It is something like the Stash or GitHub, which we use. Code deploy is again a service where we can do a lot of automations and deploy services on the EC2 instance or S3. So, and the code pipeline is the continuous delivery service. So it works on the CI/CD model, continuous integration, continuous delivery model. It helps us build, test, and deploy our code. Every time there are some changes in the code, it automatically does it. We just have to configure it initially. Whenever we make some changes, whenever a group of developers, if there are 10-15 developers, if one of them makes some change, it automatically commits the change, it deploys, it tests. So it will just throw some exceptions if something is not right. So nobody has to go and deploy it and monitor it for results. So management tools will be very useful if we have a lot of our applications hosted on AWS. So CloudWatch is a web service that provides monitoring for AWS cloud resources for all the services, EC2, S3, EBS. So we can configure what we need to monitor. This can be compared to our FrameFlow service. CloudFormation is a service which gives developers and businesses an easy way to create a collection of related AWS services. Now, Amazon Machine Image will have machine resources and applications and operating systems. But CloudFormation will be a combination of the resources which is available within AWS. So we can define something, and if we want a same combination of services, we can just go to the CloudFormation. It will be like a snapshot. We can select it and we can easily deploy it. CloudTrail is equivalent of audit trail in the databases. It keeps track of every user activities. So this is the reason where we have to create IAM users instead of giving everybody the root credentials. If we have different users created using the identity and access management service, we can monitor and track every user activity. So if somebody is leaving the organization after a fight with manager, if he just deletes the database, you can you should be able to pinpoint it and get details on who deleted the database or who dropped the database. So a CloudTrail can be used, for such identification, or just to, go back in time to restore a backup. So config service, it provides users resource inventory. It will have details on configuration history and configuration notification. OpsWork is a service which lets us use tools like Chef. We can define applications architecture and specification like package installation, configuration, and storage resources. So we have service catalog. It is used to create and manage service catalog of IT services. It is more like our Confluence, where we can put a lot of information and make it accessible to groups of users or specific users. So Trusted Advisor is an automated system by AWS. It helps us provision required services and resources by following best practices. So again, security and identity, we have seen what is identity and access management. Directory service is a service which can be linked to our existing Active Directory setup. So if all of us have global accounts and product accounts, and there were user domains also, there is an STL products domain. So instead of creating identity and access management users and groups, so we can use the directory service and map it with our Microsoft Active Directory. So by using this, we can set up a new and standalone directory in the AWS cloud. So WAAF is Web Application Firewall. It helps us improve the web applications from different security vulnerabilities. It is like one additional layer of security which is offered by AWS. And then we have Certificate Manager, which we can use to manage our SSL and TLS certificates. We have analytics. Yeah, I think we don't have to look at analytics or Internet of Things. Yeah. So basically, Internet of Things is a concept, as all of you know, it is about connecting from the internet to every device out there and managing something like you want to increase or decrease the temperature of your refrigerator, or if you want the beer to be more chilled, so you can control the refrigerator or freezer from your mobile phone. So that is a service which is offered by AWS IoT also now. So the data is processed and mapped to a running application. So this feature is available even when the device is offline. Game Lift is again a service for games where if you look at all the new games, so every game on the phone is connected to the internet. You can play against some gamer across a different continent. So that if you are managing such a game on your own premises, you can use the Game Lift service also to manage such an application. It will be more available compared to managing such a game on premises. So, and it will also save time in managing or making updates or upgrades, because you can always use a copy of the existing EC2 or S3 setup and just upgrade the other setup while making one setup down. So after one setup is upgraded, you can make that setup available and upgrade the other EC2 instance. So that is game left. I will not look at mobile services. So among all these services, Elastic Transcoder is something which we can relate to our application. In case of Media Manager, we do a lot of encoding. So for such a processor or compute intensive task, we can use the Elastic Transcoder. Yeah, so that's all the most of the services which we use will be around EC2, S3, RDS, Identity Access Management, Route 53, and VPC. So some enterprise applications, workspaces, work docs, and work email. Workspaces can be compared to the Citrix systems where the desktops will be on cloud and only available to the users in the form of thin client without a standalone CPU. Work docs, again, it can be compared to Microsoft Office services or Google Docs. So work email is again, every email service out there is available on cloud now. So these are the enterprise applications which AWS has created, but they are still in nascent stage. Not many people are using it. But if they make them more robust, yeah, someday it can compete with Citrix also. So we have 2 minutes left. Do you have any questions in the chat window? Yeah. Okay. All the questions. So first question, yeah, the difference between Snowball and the storage gateway. Snowball is something, Bobby, do you still have that question? Or did I cover it? Oh, yeah, Tony has answered it. Okay.
I think the questions are covered.
Yeah, cold HDD, yeah. All the questions are covered.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we will try to provision an EC2 instance tomorrow. We will create a new EC2 instance, and if any of you wants to know how to create a personal account and experiment with AWS, I will show how to create a personal account and create an EC2 instance, S3 bucket. How to basically I'm focusing on how to create a Windows EC2 instance, as we will be using Windows EC2 instance mostly for our applications, and we are not using any Linux servers also. We will see how to copy something onto the EC2 instance, how to make it available, how to set up a website, and how to RDP from our local machine. We will just cover all these in our tomorrow's session, and I will try to give some more details about other services. Or if you have any questions with what we discussed today, you can just mail me, and I will try to get answers for those questions, and we can talk about those questions tomorrow again.
That's great, Vivek. Thank you much for that.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.